I'll get this recording going so everybody can hear this. I don't even know when I got this, like 2008 or something ridiculous.
Yeah, it
Still
looks.
going. I pray over it. You know what? Every so often it dies, and then I pray over it and it resurrects. I said, Lord, I do this. So Ruth's music is on here. Got her name here, and I soak to this like I did this morning every day. So
Wow,
kudos to you.
that's amazing.
Oh, yeah, I hope you still play violin in heaven so we can enjoy it for eternity. That would be awesome. So Ruth is UK born and Canadian citizen and spends a whole lot of time in Israel. You're going back to Israel. So Lord, thank you for today. Thank you for this amazing community of intercessors who pray daily for Israel
Thank
and
you.
the Jewish people. Lord, you are so good. Thank you.
Mm.
Thank you. You know, there's a lot to say, but I really want to give you the time. And Ruth, could you also share, like, just give people a snippet who don't know you so well, how you ended up with such a massive heart for Israel, the ability to live in Israel, and to and that is it the Terazim, what that incredible production that you did? Because I want people to be able to access that online too. So over to
Uh,
you. Yeah.
right. Well, it was one of God's suddenlies, whereas, yeah, I'll just try and tell it quickly. Somebody gave me a book of poetry and art of children that were in the ghetto of Theresienstadt or Terezin, which is now in Czechia, it was then Czechoslovakia. And this person gave me this book to look at, and strangely he said to me, "I think you might want to do something with this." And this guy wasn't a believer. He was a high school history teacher and a passionate amateur violinist. And I can remember thinking to myself, what would you think I might be wanting to do with it? Because it contained the poetry of these children that were in this ghetto. And so basically, I ended up a year later. I ended up creating this piece because I felt God was asking me to take some of these poems to put them together with some of the scriptures and to portray his heart in the midst of the suffering. And so this was, God brought me in through a back door. He really did. I wasn't looking to do something for the Jewish people or for Israel or anything. I wasn't. And it wasn't that I didn't have deep respect and honor, really, I would say, for the Jewish people. Many of my teachers, professors, violin teachers, they were Jewish, and some of the most influential musicians in my life were Jewish. So there was there, but I didn't have God's heart in there. And so when I started responding to what God was asking me to do and to write this piece that ended up being a huge piece for orchestra, choirs, children's choir, adult choir, soloists, and it was performed here first here in Toronto. It went to Europe, and then it went to Israel, and then it went to New York a few years later. So it was, but in the process of writing the piece, when I came to the end of that, and in the context of that too, of meeting Holocaust survivors, and then it was a strange kind of thing because I suddenly realized, especially when we went to Europe, I realized that God had inserted his people Israel into my heart, and in a way that I could never, I could never really imagine how that could be or how he did it. But it was, there they were. There was God's people in my heart, and nothing I can do to change it. Uh, and so that's the story. And so the first time I ever went to Israel was when I was looking to do performances of this piece, Oratorio Terezin, in Israel, and it was performed there, and that was amazing. And Europe, of course, doing something about the Holocaust with these children's poems as well was an amazing thing because it was like redeeming places and situations, land where the enemy had control. Yeah, I remember in Vienna performing this piece, and we had one boy in the choir. It was a wonderful choir, and one of the boys from here, his name was Jakey, and he was Jewish. He'd been Orthodox, and he kind of became the representative in many ways. There he was, 10 years old, with a huge heart for his people, and also a lot of knowledge for a 10-year-old about the Holocaust. So it was really something, and life changing. I think life changing for me, the whole process, and for many of, especially the children that were involved in it. And so that's, when I finished writing that and doing that, I thought maybe my life would go back to normal at some point. And after I'd done it, and I didn't really realize that God had changed my life forever, and it wasn't going to go back to normal. And so it kind of went on from there. And I visited Israel a few times afterwards, and I was always really happy to go, and also quite happy to come home to Canada. And but then something just kind of happened, and interestingly enough, it really happened even more strongly after I started learning Hebrew, and that was, I don't quite know. It's this connection between the language, the Hebrew language, and the people and the land. And I used to pray for Israel wherever they are in the world, but I hadn't got the land part.
Wow.
I hadn't got the part about Israel, and the importance of the land. And so that really came more once I started learning the language and the culture of
Wow.
Israel. So
No,
yeah.
that's amazing. I love how Ruth said about God deposited the Jewish people into my heart. That is a really good way of putting it, because I wonder if that's the testimony of a lot of these people on this call who are so faithful daily to pray for Israel, the Jewish people, even though they live in Germany and France and Canada and America. Anyway, so that's brilliant. Ruth, you've been back since the war started to Israel. Then you've come back again to Canada. Talk about what you've seen. I haven't been able to get to the land since it started. What you've seen in terms of even how, more fuel for how we can pray. I'm thinking of trauma, the word trauma. Like what was your perception, being, sort of an outsider, but sort of an insider in terms of the greatest need in terms of the prayer community, the global prayer community for Israel?
Yeah, well, it is a country and a people in trauma. There's no doubt about that. Now I was there when everything started in Gaza. And I came back to Israel. I mean, I came back to Canada. Well, actually, I went back to England. But anyway, I left about 2 weeks after. The reason I left was not because I wanted to leave. I desperately didn't want to leave. But my two children, especially my son, was very, he just couldn't deal with me being there. And he had so many questions. He's very he reads the news, he reads the alternative news. He's not a sort of watch CBC kind of a guy. He's really, he really does his stuff, and he was so upset about what was happening. And he would say to me, even when I left, and I went to England for about 5 weeks, and sort of met with people there and spoke there. And he would always say to me, "But Mom, what about the children? What about the children? I can't deal with it. I can't deal with the children." And so I ended up coming back, and we've had a really, really good conversations, and it was maybe the most healing thing ever, in terms of growing our relationship as a mother and son. Afterwards, I realized this was the right thing to do, to come back. When I left, I live in a small yeshuv in the Shomron, in Samaria. And so the majority of the people in this little yeshuv are religious. some not, but the majority, yes. And I remember for the first few days how everything was very subdued. People were locked away in their homes. Nobody knew what was going to happen next. I mean, it was a really worrying time. People were locking their doors, and which we don't usually do, and that went on for about 3 or 4 days, and then it came to Shabbat, the Friday, just before Shabbat. And I'm sitting in my little apartment, and all of a sudden I hear this noise of cars honking and people cheering, and the youth, interesting enough, B'nai Akiva, which is a youth movement in religious circles, they had started this thing, and they'd all gotten to their cars, and they were driving around our little town, driving around in circles, basically, singing, Israel Chai, everything. Long live Israel! Israel's alive! Everyone's. It was such an expression of faith, and in a sense, I would say a sort of a defiance in a way against the enemy. So that's how it was, and that's how it was for quite a long time. But I left, and things were really, really positive, a positive vibe going on. And then, as you know, things were really bad before that all happened in terms of society, such a rift. And it seemed like everyone came together then. But it didn't take long before things started to unravel again. So we're in a situation where there's not only trauma,
Yeah.
deep trauma, but there's also division, and
Yeah.
and that is really, really hard. I think in terms of what's just happened now in Lebanon with these pages. I mean, this incredible. I mean, it's. I don't know how to describe it, but all I know is I feel an excitement on the inside that something is happening, and it just seems so brilliant. The what they've done. It's like, wow.
Yeah.
And so I sort of think, I think that there's a reemergence of hope. So
Yeah.
I think we really, really, really need to keep praying. I mean, as you are looking at your prayer points, and for Netanyahu, for just the resolve to go all the way is so important at this point.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Ruth, can you go ahead and get ready to show us, because you emailed me that you've got a piece where you played violin at the Nova Festival.
Oh.
Ruth was going to play for us live, but she felt that the sound might not come through. So love to see just a part of that.
Okay, I have to go find that.
Oh, I see. You emailed me, so I thought you had it already. But if you don't, it's okay.
I wasn't sure if you wanted to see it or not. I can try and find it.
See if you find it. But in the meantime, I want to talk to people about a reminder that this Sunday, September 22nd, we are starting a 21-day fast. Okay, so the 21-day fast is for Israel. It is for the Jewish people. And I really do feel like it's relevant to add a fast also for the U.S. election. If you guys know who Eric Metaxas is, Eric Metaxas really felt the Lord say there needs to be, it was based on a dream that there needs to be fasting and prayer for the U.S. election, because we want the U.S. obviously to stand with Israel, strongly stand with Israel, not to waver back and forth. So that fast starts on Sunday, 21 days, right up until the Day of Atonement, October 12th, which is, of course, the Million Women on the Mall. I never tell everybody, you need to do this or you must do that or whatever. You need to hear from God. But if you hear from God to go to the Million Women on the Mall, please do. And you also need to hear from God regarding the fast. So just ask the Lord what that looks like. But that fast is starting, and then to toss in there about there's a November 1st gathering in Birmingham for anybody that wants to come or can come. And that's with Lou Engle, Robert Henderson, the Courts of Heaven guy. and Heather Johnson, myself, Julie Collier, and we are going to do a segment in there, Courts of Heaven, regarding the U.S. election. And by the way, Ruth, Canada really needs an election too. So help, Lord. Don't forget, I haven't forgotten Canada. All right. So you tell us if you have that or not, because it's okay.
I don't think I do. It's going to be
No problem.
take up too much time trying to organize it. But if you
No
go
problem.
if you go on my YouTube site, there's all kinds of stuff there.
Okay. Look for her YouTube. I already put in the chat the Oratorio Terezin in the chat. I put the link for that, so you can
Good.
find more.
I did want to just talk a little bit about the whole thing of the trauma.
And do that, and then launch us in prayer after that. Yep, go ahead.
Okay. So, you know, the word, I think probably for many of us that have been drawn to pray and to love the Jewish people, to pray for them, is Isaiah 40, comfort my people, speak tenderly to the heart of Jerusalem. And so that there's that, I remember having this conversation with my really good Orthodox friend, Gil, who I work together with all the time. And we were doing some things together, and we were preparing for a group that were coming to be with us. And I said to Gil, because I was sharing with him how that verse was so important and sort of foundational for me. And I was sharing that with him, and I said, how do you read that? How do you read that? Comfort my people. Because for me, I would say, for me as a Christian, this is God calling to the Gentiles to pray for Israel. And that's how I've always felt it was a call to me to speak comfort. And then he thought about it for a moment, and just because of the way it's written in the Hebrew, there's a few ways you could read it. But he said to me, the way he's always read it is that it's God speaking to the Jewish people. It's God speaking to his people, saying, comfort my people. In other words, have comfort, my people. And so he's always seen it like that. And I was thinking about that. I thought, why would, you know, we see it as being God's call to us. He sees it as God calling and just bringing them comfort. And I started to realize that probably the reason he would have never thought that it was God speaking to the Gentiles is because he's never seen the fulfillment of it. You know, or hardly ever. We're beginning to see more and more connection and the realization that Christians are praying for them. But that up until that point, he hadn't really seen that. And I just, you know, it just really made me think about that. So, yeah. So, Father, we do just want to come and say, Lord, how we long to bring that, we long to bring that comfort to your people.